I think one of the biggest disservices that ever happened to the martial arts, karate especially, is when group training became more of a thing. Hey, what's up? I'm Ken, this is kenfuTV, and each week I release videos in the martial arts, philosophy, technique, training, that sort of thing. If that's the sort of thing you're into, then I hope you stick around. I hope you subscribe and follow and comment down below so that we can keep conversations going on and build a community of like-minded people. But today we're going to talk about group training and how group training has failed us in a way, and what we can do to maybe fix it. But first, let's talk shirts and patches. I'm really excited about this shirts and patches segment specifically this week. But before that, if you have a shirt or a patch that you want to send to feature on this segment, to get you featured, your club featured on this channel, send it over to shirtsandpatches@kenfu.tv. Now let's talk about today's patch. So today's patch, actually there are two. And I'm going to start off with the first one. They're both from the same person, someone who is very dear to me. Many of you know that I train Tobosa's Kale Eskrima, and this comes directly from Maestro Tobosa. So he sent over this awesome patch here. This is one of their main patches with the crab logo, because the system is called kasag, which means the crab. But then you also have your stick and your bolo, and the triangles, of course, representative of the Filipino Kali method. But more importantly, and I've got a letter to go with this one, we've got this here. This one here is a special patch that Maestro CJ sent. Not seen nearly as often these days. So let me read what he had to say. So with this one, Maestro CJ says, "Aloha Ken, here's the history of the Gold Star patch with the letters EKK. Barikan wanted to honor his most influential teacher, Grandmaster Floro Villabreo, and he created this patch to do so with a few changes to represent his system. He also wanted to represent the Filipino culture and martial arts that he has learned and taught. The E stands for Eskrima, the K for Kajikumi, and the second K for Kali. The three golden stars represent the three major island groups of the Philippine Islands, which are Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. The stick with the handle at 11 o'clock represents the Eskrima, and the blade with the handle at 2 o'clock represents Kali. The hands that are shaking in the middle represents brotherhood and unity, working together to perpetuate the culture and the art of the Philippines. All these symbols are in the golden triangle to represent Barikan's beliefs, goals, and journey. It also represents mind, body, and soul as well. The colors red, blue, and white represents the colors that are on the Philippine flag." So there you have it. That is the EKK golden triangle patch to go with the standard kasag patch. These are really cool and very, very special to me, and I'm really, really glad to share them with you. And the letter to go with it is just part of the coolest part. To go with that, today I'm wearing one of the first shirts that I ever got when I started training Tobosa Kale Eskrima. You'll notice usually I'm wearing a blue shirt, something like that. This one is a black shirt, Tobosa Kale Eskrima. This was designed by the local group. In this case, the same logo on the back as it is on the front. The crab, the triangle, and the stick and blade. Very cool, means a lot to me, and I'm glad to share it with you. So again, if you want to tell your story, if you want to have your story featured on this channel, and I hope that you do, send a letter, send a patch, send a t-shirt, send something for me to share of yours, to get the word out about you, and to share your story to shirtsandpatches@kenfu.tv. I'll get you a mailing address and we'll get that done. In the meantime, let's jump back to today's episode. So today we're talking about group training and how group training has affected the martial arts. And I'm going to speak specifically of karate because I don't completely know how group training has affected other arts, but I do specifically know how I've seen it affect karate, and I'm sure that other arts have fallen into a similar methodology. First, I want to preface by saying it's not necessarily terrible. I just think that it could be better. If you go far enough back, then the martial arts were passed from person to person, and the idea of training in a group setting wasn't really very common. Instead, you had maybe a couple people learning from somebody, and a lot of times it was familial. It was trained through family or close relationships with a family. Over time, as it became less of a problem for people to train in groups and to train publicly, because a lot of times these arts were not trained in that way. As that became less of a thing and people became able to support themselves that way and take on many students, especially as the idea of a school being able to support itself financially through dues and that sort of thing, then having multiple people became very beneficial. And then especially as you fast forward to when these things were taught in universities and clubs and stuff like that, then what you get is you get a bunch of people and usually one or two teachers, which the more students there are to the teacher ratio, then the problem that you run into is How do you make sure that you're able to see what's going on and train everybody and bring everybody up together? And a lot of times that's by making things uniform, by testing people on their ability to perform the syllabus exactly rather than uniquely. Given that consideration, it makes it much easier to bring everybody up together. And when you look at the way the ranks work, typically in a lot of schools, that is exactly it. You have the skill set, the requirements, the prerequisites, the curriculum, all of it together. That syllabus has benchmarks, and those benchmarks all raise everybody at the same level. You should be able to do all of these things. You should know this set material. You should be able to perform it to this satisfactory level, etc., etc. Again, all in all, not the worst thing, but the individuality falls apart for that, and that's the negative. That's the thing that I'm talking about, where I think that group training has failed us, is in many cases group training becomes about raising everybody equally rather than raising anybody individually. Now, what do we do about it? How do we manage that? I should say that places already are. I know for one that our school does this, and that's partially why I'm so passionate about it. But I know that there are other schools that do this as well, and it's important to bring these things in. Everybody on the mat is an individual. Everybody on the mat has a different reason for being on the mat. Everybody has a different set of skills, different strengths, different weaknesses. Everybody has different interests. Their motivations to learn the art are separate and different amongst themselves. So it's important, I think, I feel, that we maximize that we recognize the individual. We recognize their motivations, why they want to be there, their strengths, what they're capable of and where they're going to excel, their weaknesses, where they're going to struggle, and what ways we can use to round that out. And lastly, the way in which they give back to the group, where they fit in the group and what they provide, and how their particular self fills a need or a role inside that group. These things, their motivations, what they're good at, what they're not good at, and their way that they provide back, all have a way of building up the group as a whole. And I believe this is, in a way, ties in some of that military strategy, the idea that the group itself is stronger than the individual. And I think we need that, because utilizing the individual helps grow the people around them. When you have a diverse group of people inside this club or school or whatever it is, then what you have are many ways to accept other people. If I am a certain way, and I teach a certain way with certain strengths and certain skills, and I have certain understanding, then people that don't have that might struggle to learn from me. A good teacher spends time learning how to overcome that. That can be a weakness, right? That could be the weakness that was overcome, is the ability to pass knowledge to somebody who doesn't have that. It's something that I look for in an advanced person, is the ability to pass knowledge. But by having individuals, people who are not built the same, who just force it, just jam it in, right? Square peg, meet round hole. In some groups, this is how it's done and you have to do it. And if you can't do it, you have to do it. So just do it. And that method doesn't really work very well. So instead, the idea that we have the ability to encourage individuality within this syllabus. It does not have to be that they learn something entirely different and everybody knows something different. It's not what I'm talking about. Instead, what I'm talking about is the ability for a person to have their way of doing things. You know, my instructor said to me, he said, if I've got two people on the mat that look the same, then I have failed. And that was his way of saying that we're all individuals. And if I train you all the same way, then the people who excel at the way that I train you will do well, and the people who don't will not. And you can't do it that way. You can't dump 75% of the group because they don't match the way you do things. And I'm thankful for him doing that, because he was built very differently, is built very differently than me, moves differently than me, very, very strong, taller than me, stacked. I mean, I'm not built that way. And so for me to do things the way that he does, if I was held to his standard, then my standard would suffer. I would not be anywhere that I am if that was the case. I look at the people, the group, the people that train with me, and the same thing happens. I've got people who are shorter, people who are thin of frame, people who are heavier, people who are stronger, people who have issues, joint issues or body issues, things like that, where they've got medical things or injuries or different things, and people who are young and fit and don't have any of those problems. And they're all different. You're going to have different people in your group. You're going to have people who excel. They learn incredibly fast, and they pick things up very naturally. And you know what? A lot of times those guys get bored. So it's not all that it cracks up to be when somebody does that. When they learn it very quickly, then it doesn't necessarily satisfy them in the same way, and they're looking for the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You've got people who take a long time to learn something, but they learn it so deeply. Their understanding of it and their execution of it is just better. A quote of another instructor of mine is, "Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard." So you take that first group of people, the people who just excel naturally. If they rely on the fact that they excel naturally and never work hard to be good, then eventually that falls down and you get the tortoise and the hare situation where the hare ran really fast and did really great right up until he stopped and the tortoise just kept going. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. Then you might also have people who are the historians, the people who want to understand where it came from, how it got here, what cultural and historical things made differences for why it works the way that it does, and can help people understand where things fit and why they fit and why they work a certain way. But maybe they're not as good at executing. And you've got people who can pass knowledge, the teachers, who are incredible at teaching, but maybe they're not very good at doing. Now, these all seem like very black and white things, and that's to establish a number of different individual traits, but then realizing these can overlap. Maybe you have a historian who's also one of the people who excels and learns really quickly. Well, that's one type of person, right? Maybe that's their combination, and they excel at the art and understand the history. Maybe you've got somebody who teaches, who is one of those hard workers who excels because of the time that they put in, and they've learned a lot and carry a lot, but they also can pass that knowledge. You might also have somebody who excels, or in the first two categories, they excel really, really well, really, really quickly, learn quickly, and they also work hard, and they develop a lot. But their ability to pass it is just non-existent. They don't care much to learn the history, it's boring to them, and their ability to teach is not strong. So they're an excellent practitioner, but not an excellent person to pass the art. So you have all of these different types of people. And that's what I think you should have. And everybody's going to move different. This is talking about different types of people, characteristics. But then you just have how people move. Some people might be blocky and stiff, but they can be fast and powerful. Then you got some people who might be more fluid and more rounded, and their motion is more circular and they move quickly. You got some people that might maximize range and strike really well, but when they get into a grappling range, they can't really handle it. You got some people that can trap really well and can pass in and out of grappling range, but maybe it falls apart as they get further back. You get some people that might be really good at putting people on the ground, and other people that might be good at putting people on the ground by knocking them out. You've got a bunch of different people that work a bunch of different ways, and at the end of the day, what I'm saying is those people shouldn't be treated as the same. And time spent making them match each other is time spent getting rid of what's beautiful about them. So train the individual. Spend time cultivating the person, the uniqueness of that person, and build a room full of unique people who all have amazing abilities. The sum of them together is greater than any one person in that room. That's what I hope to achieve. That's what I hope to accomplish, and that's what I hope people out in the world are trying to do, is cultivate the individual. Real quick, we'll jump into comments from last week, and then we'll wrap this up. Okay, we're talking comments from last week. Last week I talked about how you need to be better than me, and how my hope is to continue to draw the best out of people. And a little bit of a discussion about the uke and its role, and the fact that the uke's job should be to bring the best out of the situation, so that when they work with their uke, the best is brought out of them as well. So let's look at what you guys had to say. So Little Giant Robo says, I think you could, and maybe should, consider putting together a whole video just on being a good training partner uke. It's a common discussion topic I see all over the place in all sorts of different arts. If you have anything to say on how to teach people to be a good partner, I feel that it'd be a great value. That's a really interesting idea, and maybe I should do that. At least just to put my perspective out there. Not because I think it's right, but like you said, if people are talking about it, then maybe I can provide a little bit of what I have to say. Jonathan Left says, finding the perfect blend of pushing, demanding more, and praise should be the goal of any instructor. How far can you push them? It is hard to find that spot. I have one sad story about that I'll never forget, but most of the time we never come close to pushing enough in my opinion. What are your thoughts then on how hard you push your students to be better than you? My thoughts. So let's wrap to just that. This is a bit of a long one, but a really, really good one, and I hope that you go read the whole thing. For brevity, I'm going to cut to the end where he asks a very specific question. He says, what are your thoughts then on how hard you push your students to be better than you? And I think a student needs to be boiled like a frog. And so if you know that colloquialism, that saying, then you know that you can't throw a frog in boiling water. It'll immediately try to hop out, right? But if you boil it slowly, then it doesn't even realize that it's being cooked. Kind of a weird and maybe a little dark thing, but it's the same idea. I want to escalate. I want to bring the students and push them. I know inherently by working with them, I know where their comfort is, and hopefully I have an idea, probably not perfect, about where their breaking point is. So if I think of that space in between their comfort level and their breaking point, usually I'm shooting for 25%. That doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're training regularly, it keeps that encouragement up, it keeps that confidence up, and they keep coming, and 25% adds, and that continues to raise. It's important that it progresses. As their comfort level increases, then that 25% mark increases, and it has to go that way. There are students who can be pushed harder, who they have the perseverance and the discipline and the determination and just the raw grit to just keep working. And I push them harder, and I get more out of them because of that. But not everybody has that. Not everybody can handle the kind of pressure. Because of that, everybody gets pushed differently. Kind of on brand for this particular video. Kyokushin Society says, I had the experience at work with both scenarios. Some of my colleagues didn't want to share their knowledge because they were afraid we would replace them at their job when we learned their trade. At the same time, others shared their knowledge and even said that they want us to be better technician than them and grow together. The last ones are the traits of an honest, confident person that you want on your team, the others not so much. You inspire me in daily life and to continue growing my YouTube channel and to share my knowledge with my own students. Arigato. Arigato to you. I hope that people watching this are checking out your channel as well, because I'm very excited that you continue to do it, and I hope that people do watch it because you're doing a great thing, and I think more people need to do this. And if you're watching this and you're not running your own YouTube channel, get started. Just do it. Let's all put ourselves out there. Let's all pass it. Let's pass it first for ourselves, cathartically. Pass it second for the people immediately able to take that, so our students. And then let's pass it to the world. We all gain. We all grow from this. And if you're a student, don't think that you can't do this if you're not an instructor, because at the end of the day, sometimes it's good for instructors to see what they're passing to their students, and that could be an interesting turn of the tides kind of deal to kind of learn and be able to measure how things are going by the perspectives and input of the students. Sir James Gray says, years ago when I started my last and current dojo from scratch, there was this point where all of my students were finally doing Pinan Nidan all together in unison proficiently, and I literally cried like a baby. It was a beautiful thing to behold. It was one of the best days of my life. That's the level of passion I have for my students. That's so cool. It is kind of amazing. But, people don't realize, students don't realize when you have those moments and you're off on the side watching and they're feeling like they're having a hard time. They're feeling like they're struggling. They're feeling like they're never going to get this figured out. And you're over there just elated, seeing the things that they can't see right now, and just so proud. And I love it. Gary Higgs says, as a father works himself out of a job with his son or daughter, when I train my students, my goal is to make them as aware as possible of their potential and explore the many different types of styles, i.e. Kali, BJJ, boxing. Be better. I'm going to run right back to, as a father works himself out of a job with his son or daughter. That's exactly it, right? We were having this conversation the other day. At the end of the day, your students should leave the nest. It's a hard thing to hear as an instructor. It's a hard thing to do because you want to pass all that, then you want to be around to experience it with them. But it's not really how it works, and it can stifle the progress and the evolution if it doesn't work that way. And that's a tough thing. That's a really tough thing. But it's a real thing, and it's not something that we should discourage. Just like raising children, they eventually have to leave and be their children so that you can be proud of them and their role in society and where they take all of this. Mary Schleicher says, I like the idea of Gracie's 3 training partners. In our Screama class, I take the new students aside because most of them are afraid of the stick and miss on purpose, so I train with them. I put all of my gear, helmet, vest, gloves, etc., and encourage them to hit with more sincere strikes, and so far this has helped all of them in their first lessons. I love that, and I love what you've described. I think that's absolutely excellent. And we do, in our screamer, we do incredibly similar things. And I think it does work. And it is really helpful. And so I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Karate in Real Life says, I feel like the bow encapsulates what you were talking about. You bow to your partner as a way of saying, I respect you. Therefore, I will take care of you as well as challenge you to the best of both of our abilities. I appreciate how you relate that to the real world. Make every interaction the best for all parties. I think it's important. At the end of the day, everything that we learn on the mat, the violence and the dealing with violence is one of the least applicable things we have that we get out of training. So we've got to carry the rest of the things out with us. And we've got to look for those. One of my favorite, I first found this in jiu-jitsu, but in general it just matches the idea of always facing your problems, which in jiu-jitsu means I need to turn and face you. I don't want to turn my back to you, etc., etc. I love that thought. Face your problems. If you don't face your problems, they don't go away, they don't get better. Sometimes they get much worse. And the same thing happens on the mat. If right now I'm your problem, then you need to face me, and we need to get this. And as you overcome that, that builds your confidence. So two things happen. You identify the problem, and then you face it directly. That applies so much to the real world. Anyway, that's it for the comments for this week. Go leave some comments on this video so that we can talk about them next week. Okay, that's it. That's it for this week. Did the comments, we did the shirts and patches, we did this whole conversation on group training. I want to hear what you have to say when it comes to groups versus individuals and raising everybody up together and having the same standards, or making sure that people are met in an individual way where their testing is individual, their grading is individual, their progress is individual. In the meantime, I hope that you enjoyed this. If you like this kind of stuff, then I hope you subscribe. You can do that right here. There's a playlist of videos like this right here and a couple more that you might like right here. I'm Ken. This is kenfuTV, and I'll catch you in the next one.